Well, my father went to the University of Michigan, and it was the only school that I was allowed to apply to. I was a little bit angry about that, but I had to pay for it anyways. He gave me all of the money that he had the first semester that I went, which was about $374, which was going to pay for my tuition for the first semester. And he loved the University of Michigan, and he carted me here from the time I could walk to take me to Drake's Candy Shop, which is now where Brugger's Bagels is. It's on North University, but he would take me there to the candy store because that's where he would have his breakfast when he was a student here at the university when he attended the medical school. And the medical school had a great influence on his life, and he became dedicated to the city of Detroit. He was a doctor who took care of a lot of the city of Detroit. And as he would tell us, we didn't have a lot of money because we were paid in puppies and pickles. And as a child, we would get puppies from patients, and my brother and I were responsible to train them to give to the Rochester School for the Blind. And we always had great food in our home, so that we were always eating fine. So I didn't really realize how poor we were, and I really didn't realize until I was a teenager the impact that he made on the lives of so many people. And I was very fortunate that he took me with him on house calls, and sometimes I would have to help out and deliver babies. And I always thought that I was going to go to medical school after my first degree here at the university. But even though I was accepted to medical school, not this one, and I was waitlisted here, and chose to do something else because I got married very soon after finishing my first degree and got immediately pregnant with my fantastic daughter. And at that time I said, I really can't go to medical school and raise a child, so I'll have to wait until she goes to school and then I'll go back and do it. And I'd been doing incredible research with a professor named Doug Lay, and he was doing hearing research. And what he had me doing was operant conditioning. This is during my undergrad. I was operant conditioning gerbils and chinchillas, and I exposed them to noise. And I would take their hearing curves, and then we would expose them to either drugs that were being worked on, in fact, amoxicillin, a drug that is used a lot with children who get ear infections now, and also Chrysler stamping plant noise. And after knowing what the hearing capabilities were of the animals, we were able to find out what did the noise do to their ears. And Dr. Lay transitioned me very early in the research to work at the Kresge Institute of Hearing Research. And I was so fortunate. I had 35 beautiful different kinds of monkeys that I got to play with, and they had the intelligence of 3 to 5 year old children. I got very close to some of them, and they had very large vocabulary, so I could open their cages and say, "Okay, kid, get in your chair." And he would put on his earphones, and I would do hearing tests of beautiful macaques. And when I got pregnant and said, "I can't go to medical school now," Dr. Lay said, "There's this incredible program that really would fit your interests." And my interests were in the environment and protecting the environment, and he knew math and science was really all I did. I was a math person. In fact, in order to pay for schooling here, I tutored calculus while I was in school. a lot of calculus. And he recommended that I go to this program here where I got my second degree. And the minute that I graduated, and in our specialty in the program, it was 11 men and me in the program. They had never really had a woman in the program. And General Motors hired 3 of us. So 2 men and me went immediately to GM, and I had responsibility for health and safety in foundries and car assembly plants and designing ventilation systems. And I was very lucky because General Motors saw some potential in me. I saw medical school in me. But very soon after, they began putting me in an executive development process and program, and I moved every 2 to 3 years into new roles in the company, and became an executive, and at one point was the HR vice president for all of General Motors outside of America, and spent a lot of time negotiating with the UAW, German unions all over the world, and leading different HR departments and different parts of the company all over the world.
Were you primarily based in Detroit then?
Well, I was based in southeastern Michigan, I would say, but of my 33 years, I spent more than a third living outside of America. I was very fortunate to live in Paris, France, and our daughter did all of her high school in Paris. And then I lived 8.5 years in Zurich, Switzerland, where our international headquarters were. And I also had an assignment in Shanghai, China, when we were building our first plant there. So I was in and out of Shanghai for almost 2 years. I didn't have to set up residence there, but I pretty much lived there and in an airplane. I had many experiences as a student that were wonderful, exciting, terrifying, exhilarating, depressing. I think all students go through all of those things. I was just very fortunate to meet Doug Lay, who I had already mentioned to you, to meet this professor who took an interest in me and cared enough to help me find my path, so to speak, and immediately helped me. He got to know me well enough through the research that I had been doing that he could easily point me in the right direction. And here at the university now, in this position that I have here, I always remember what can I do to give to my students, because he made such an impression on me and changed my life. And I would say probably one of the examples of fun times and silly times is when I first came here, there were no women in West Quad. And we were the first group of girls to integrate West Quad. So I was a West Quaddie. And I was in Madison House, and my roommate and she and I had been friends since we were 10 years old in Detroit. We went in, we're still best friends to this day. And in fact, I just went to her third child, her baby daughter's wedding 2 weeks ago in San Diego. And she and I did a lot of things together, but one thing that we did is study in the law library, because we thought if we studied in the law library, that beautiful, magnificent reading room, we would meet a lawyer. And so we had this dream of doing that. Neither of us married lawyers, but that's where we started out. But walking always through the diag, walking the places that my father had taken us. She was Her name's Janet, and Janet was in nursing school. She's a med-surg nurse. And when she was in nursing school, she was having all sorts of trouble with learning the nerves in the neck. And I can still remember my father coming up and spending the day in the anatomy lab with her, working so that she can do well on her anatomy exam. Going to Pizza Bob's at 11:30 at night and having tuna fish submarine sandwiches and vanilla milkshakes, and making, after learning that Blimpie Burgers at that time, and then we're talking in the early 70s, had been serving horse meat, vowing to never eat at the Blimpie Burgers, so we never ate there. We moved all over the city into different apartments through our time. So many fun activities, but probably a lot of studying, a lot of math and science is pretty much what I did.
Yeah, when you were stressed out over studying, what did you do to help relax or help get your mind off of it?
I was really into boys a lot. I would have to say that probably it was partying with the men that, the young men that I had relationships with. So, and having, at one point, there were 5 of us girls in one apartment, so we were all pretty much in science, so kind of a group of nerds, but nerds can have fun too. So, we cooked together, we made a lot of different things. We learned how to be adults together and deal with conflict and all of the things that young people do during college years. Oh, there definitely was tremendous student activism. My husband, who is 5 years older than me, had been here earlier, and he was even more active, perhaps, because he went to the March on Washington. This was Vietnam era. Both of us were pretty much against the Vietnam War. I lost many of my high school friends in Vietnam. It was the first time that I ever went to a march against the war. It happened to have been in my home. It was in Detroit. My roommate Janet and I went, and to be surrounded by police officers, and I'd always been very close to the police officers in my neighborhood, who were friends of our neighborhood. It was very different to be corralled and pushed around, and it was a very tense time in the history of our country, and I learned a lot from it, and truly learned a lot about what it takes to be a soldier, having friends that went through that period. And now I'm very fortunate here in the Ross Business School. We work with a lot of different government agencies, and I'm so proud of our military. And just recently even got to participate with our young ROTC and talk to them about their future careers. So it's been a full circle experience of being against a war and then becoming so appreciative of the people who secure our country. I can only speak to what we've been doing here at Ross, and we have many projects going on for students to participate in rebuilding, in thinking about entrepreneurship, building new things in Detroit. We use it as a laboratory for learning, as well as giving back to a community. And so many of our students, many of them who don't come from Detroit, have had amazing experiences learning about the sense of community, learning about the needs of a community right near us. And it's been a wonderful learning laboratory that I see as continuing. We do many activities with our MBA students, for instance, like going down to Focus Hope and working, learning how to work together in teams to collaborate, and giving back to the city at the same time. So many different activities that we do here that I'm very proud of. I always tell my students that they should do what they love. That if you love what you do, your career is not work. So you need to find your passion. Passion is very important. Find what you love to do. And here at the university, no matter what department you are in, you can find so much. And because we have the largest group of alumni, the largest alumni base of any school, there's always the opportunity to connect as well with alumni and get advice and help and just the connectivity of what people may need, and asking a quick question of where'd you get? How'd you get there? What'd you do to get there? And people are always willing to help. University of Michigan is in Michigan, and Michigan's in the Midwest. We are that kind of culture that we want to help each other. It just takes students being willing to step up and ask questions, to make time, to go really pay attention to when are those office hours, because those professors really do want to know who you are and want to learn who you are, and they want to help you be the best you can be. That's all I've ever really found at Michigan, are people who care about others learning, and that's why it's so great to be here in the business school.